Emboldened by what they envisioned on the shore of the world's greatest lake, these men and women staked their claims and their futures in the Zenith City.
And it was the wilderness. The streets in Duluth were mud at that time. It wasn't unusual to see a bear walking down Superior Street. It wasn't unusual to have deer down on Superior Street.
And in the final burial place for many of the early leaders of this pioneer town, a story waiting to be told. It took guts and imagination to relocate to a pioneer town like Duluth. In 1870, just after the city was incorporated, a honeymooning couple landed in the boomtown, intent on making it their home.
And Bernard and Nettie came in 1870, and they landed on Park Point. And some records will say that Nettie was the first white bride.
Bernard Silberstein and his wife Nettie came from Detroit by way of Budapest, the first Jewish settlers in Duluth. Bernard had entered the dry goods business working at Marshall Fields in Detroit and was told he might do better if he opened his own store. But establishing a business in Duluth took a real vision for the city's future prospects.
The streets in Duluth were mud at that time. There were reports, in fact we have one picture that shows the very first store, being a little kind of a ramshackle place. And they sold fresh water and unusual kinds of things that they would import and start selling, and the store did well.
Bernard's instincts about Duluth had paid off, and in 1884, the firm moved into a fine new red stone building at 9 West Superior Street, just across the street from the original store.
The store immediately was a success. Duluth was getting a lot of mansions being built. There were, immigrants coming into the area. There were a lot of houses that needed a lot of draperies and a lot of oriental carpets and things. And that was the first of the real success for Bernard, was importing all of those fine fabrics, importing all the oriental carpets and selling them in the store there.
Silberstein and Bondy was a trendsetter in the growing town, offering the finest merchandise and appealing to a select customer base.
They catered to what they called the carriage trade, the people who would come by carriage and would be dropped off at the front door. They actually had a doorman who would greet the guests, help them out of a light from their carriages. The store had, wide aisles, had nice display counters, sold, all the same kinds of general merchandise that you would have found at the time at Dayton's in Minneapolis or at Marshall Fields in Detroit or New York.
The Silberstein and Bondy department store grew to be one of the largest and finest in the Northwest and weathered the ups and downs of the economy without pause for decades. Bernard Silberstein loved Duluth and served as a city commissioner early in the 20th century. And he believed strongly in the value of public parks.
Bernard oftentimes would take money out of his own pocket when the city was having economic challenges to fund the construction of a new city park, recognizing how important that quality of life was to the citizens of the city.
Family was very important to Silberstein, beginning with a remarkable relationship with his wife of more than 50 years.
Bernard started the store, but his wife was right alongside him, and she worked in the store, for many, many years, helping him sell the merchandise, display the merchandise, unpack and mark and get it ready for display and things. So it was really a family effort.
Perhaps most telling of that love for family is this gracious home at 21st Avenue East and 1st Street in Duluth. It was built as an anniversary gift for Nettie. The surprise was revealed as they walked home together after celebrating their anniversary at a family gathering in 1914.
And when they got to the corner of 1st Street and 21st Avenue East, or Oregon Street as it was called at that time, Bernard stopped and asked Nettie, he said, "Do you like this house?" And she goes, I like it very much. I don't know whose it is. I've watched it being built for 2 years now. And he pulled the key, which we have here, out of his pocket and said, well, this is your house. Happy anniversary, dear. And presented her with the key to the house.
The Silbersteins named it High Point House, and it is owned today by Dennis Lampkin and John Nemi, who opened up the house for our camera.
The original blueprints of the house, drawn by Frederick German, and we have all the elevations. We even have an alternative plan for the front of the house. They chose one style, but they had 2 different options that they considered. We chose to do this mural because, firstly, it's John and my favorite painting at the Minneapolis Art Institute, and it kind of depicts the life that brought Bernard to Duluth. Bernard sold Oriental carpets in the store. He made the majority of his fortune selling those Oriental carpets. He would actually go to Turkey and buy carpets for the store at a Turkish carpet mart. And so we thought that it was representative of what, was appropriate for the house. Well, this was Bernard's counting room, and when he would come home from the store at the end of the day, he would come in. There was a little chair here, drop down the desktop, and make his count up the cash for the day and make his bank deposit out of here. It's all steel I-beam construction. All the floors are concrete. There's clay tile between every wall. It's really built because he used an architect who was most skilled in building commercial buildings. It's really built as a commercial building.
Just like the house, the Silberstein and Bondi department store building at 9 West Superior Street still stands, although its original facade was altered with a terracotta renovation dating back to the 1920s. And thanks to thoughtful preservation of the High Point House, 2 of Duluth's most remarkable pioneer residents have not been forgotten.
It was more than just making this a nice house for John and I. It was about restoring it and preserving, maybe bringing back to light a little bit of the history of the Silberstein family.